Hey there. The story that we're going to be talking about today is called The Telltale Heart. We're going to be reading through some of those paragraphs to help us with some of our comprehension skills and to help us a little bit with predicting text and outcomes as we're reading something and try to get our minds ready to help us comprehend some of those higher level text. I think you're really going to enjoy this story. So as we go through it, I will help you through some of the comprehension strategies that we're going to do. Okay, first I want to get started with a review of some vocabulary. So we talked about these yesterday, but there's three words that I want you to kind of keep an eye out for as we're reading. The first one is foresight, and that means thoughtful regard for the future. So if I have foresight, I'm thinking about the future. I'm thinking about what's going to happen in the future, those kind of things. So we'll pay attention to that in the text because that'll give us a better understanding. The word dissimulation means hidden under a false appearance. So something like a disguise, something that appears to be something that it's not. Dissimulation. And the word vexed, that means troubled, distressed, or caused agitation. So someone is, if they're vexed, they're upset. Something's going on. So we're going to read about someone that was very vexed in this story. So pay attention to those words. They'll be highlighted in the text as we read. And we'll talk about them as we get there. Okay, so the activity that we're going to do is called Think, Pause, Predict. So I'm going to read a certain part of the story, and on this slide you'll see that I'm going to talk about the title. So that's a good kind of place for us to start, is reading the story's title, predicting what we think is going to be about. That'll help us better understand the story and kind of get our minds in the right place to comprehend. So the Telltale Heart. So based on this title, I want you to predict what you think the story will be about. You can write it down. We're going to come back and talk about this later. So based on that title, predict what you think the story will be about. Now we're making predictions. These are guesses based on clues that we're reading. So there's no right or wrong answer as far as this question goes. But try to use some of the words in there to help you think about what you think that story is going to be about. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So this is the first paragraph. I'm going to read this through for us. The thing that you should do as I'm reading is follow along, first off, and as we're reading, try to create a movie in your mind. Think about the words that I'm reading, think about what you're hearing, and try to create a picture in your head. I know sometimes it's easy to zone out and to think about other things, but really try to think about what's being said, if you can create a picture of what's being said. All right. True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous. I'd been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. Okay. So think, pause, predict. What do you think the narrator, or who do you think the narrator is speaking to? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. This is your prediction. We're going to see if they're right at the end. But right now, who do you think he's speaking to? The narrator is the one telling the story. Remember that. All right, let's go on to the next one. The second paragraph. It is impossible to say how the first idea entered my brain, but once convinced, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Think, pause, predict. Who do you think the old man is? Because if we go back, it says something about, I loved the old man. The narrator is saying that this man had an eye of a vulture. A vulture is like a bird that eats dead animals, that like kind of like a crow. and he had a pale blue eye with a film over it. Notice this last sentence. It says, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man. Think about what that means. Sounds like we have a mystery going on in this story, don't you think? All right, so you're predicting who you think the old man is. Let's go to the next paragraph. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation. I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, that no light shone out. And then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh, so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just as much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. So you should have been picturing a lot in there. Picturing a man creeping into some old man's room with a lantern. He's doing this very, very slowly, very, very quietly. And we know that he's killed the man. He told us that at the beginning. So we'll figure out why. Think, pause, predict. I want you to write down what you think the author means by the work. I'll show you where he says that. He says, I went to work. What do you think that means? With what dissimulation I went to work? What do you think the work means? Make a prediction for that. And let's move on to the third paragraph. As this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight, but I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he has passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man, indeed, to suspect that very night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Okay, let's see what you need to predict in this one. Why does the narrator treat the old man so well in the mornings? Why do you think? Make your prediction here. Why do you think the narrator treats the old man so well in the mornings? All right, once you made your prediction, go ahead and write that down. We're going to continue reading this story at a later time, but as you can see, stopping in the middle of either a long paragraph or stopping at the end of a paragraph to think, pause, and predict or reflect on what you've read is going to help you tremendously when you're reading independently. Sometimes stories are hard to comprehend, whether it's the vocabulary or just the nature of the story, but thinking and pausing on what you've read will help you tremendously. Now, I've given you questions to ask yourself as we go through the story. Sometimes you won't have those, but trying to either jot down a summary of what you've read or even drawing a picture or just something to help you remember as you go along some of these longer stories, especially when we're reading things like Edgar Allan Poe. So I know I've kept you hanging with how this story is going to go, and it's a little weird right now. We'll continue reading this at a later time, and we'll get some more answers about what's going on with this old man and his creepy eye. What I would do after a lesson like this, especially if I'm having students write down some of their predictions and thoughts about what are happening, is maybe pair up with another student to share their predictions. I think that would be super helpful, especially for students who aren't grasping the concept completely. Having them pair up with a student that's maybe stronger in comprehension to kind of help see what they think and how they make predictions and how they comprehend text, I think would be helpful. Definitely rereading things like that are heavier for students to understand, I think would be important too. Um, just different simple strategies to help student apply that to independent reading, I think is important.